There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We're here today with Josh Mangum, Director of Strategy at Search Solution Group. Josh, how are you doing today, man?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Josh, before we get into today's topic on branding, I'd love for you to take a second to share with our listeners what you and the team at SSG are up to these days.
Sure. So Search Solution Group, we're a large, broad-based national recruitment firm, pretty diversified. We've got basically everything from direct hire, contingent search to executive search to contract staffing. So doing a lot, trying to keep up with our clients' needs. I think the demand for what we do is just increasing every day, so trying to keep up with that. Just got named to the Inc. 5000 list for the fourth year in a row. So we're one of the fastest growing companies in the country for 4 years back to back. So again, just keeping up with the growth, keeping up with the demand, and trying to give our clients better and better service. So in a nutshell, that's what we've been up to.
Yeah, I love it. And we definitely noticed that you guys have been on the Inc. fastest growing list a few years in a row. So that's why we're really excited to hear from you guys, and specifically today to hear about a topic that I think is top of mind for a lot of our audience. And that's the topic of brand and branding, both from a company perspective and from a personal perspective. So if it's okay with you, Josh, I'd like to jump right in. We're going to get into some great stories here in a little bit. But first off, as we were talking offline, you mentioned having a little bit of a different take that you've shared internally with your team or with folks that know you, as far as what brand means to you. So let's open it up there and have you share with us a little bit on that point.
Yeah, sure. And it kind of goes back to somebody I've worked for really early in my career. He told me this, and it's kind of stuck with me. He said, a brand is a brand is a brand. It's just a word, and it's going to remain just a word until somebody makes an emotional connection with that particular word, that particular brand. So, whether your brand is, Chevy or Nike, or whether it's brand new and you just got your LLC signed, a couple of weeks ago, that brand and building that brand is just incredibly important to your business, because it's the intrinsic value that somebody associates with what you do and the services that you provide. So to me, the branding efforts are paramount to just about any other marketing or strategic initiative you're going to take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love this topic because, it's something that I think some of the fastest growing companies are really thinking about. And, the growth that you guys have seen, is kind of a testament to that, because, a lot of the fast growing tech companies or other B2B brands seem like they are really focused and doubled down on building a brand, and they see that long-term play. So getting into this a little bit more, Josh, you mentioned that, one of the areas that you've seen as far as, company brand management that you've thought about in the past is, thinking about short-term marketing campaigns that might be a great idea. They might even generate a lot of engagement, but if they don't match up with your long-term brand strategy, then it might be best to avoid those. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. It's short-term thinking versus long-term thinking. And when you were just mentioning those tech companies and all the companies out there with hyper growth, you've got to understand that, especially now, today, with the way things are, the internet, social media, you're constantly interacting with your audience or potential audience. And so the potential to influence somebody's their opinion or their the way that they view your company it's magnified compared to what it used to be 10, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to really think constant. You've got to think long term. There's a lot of ideas that we come up with in our internal marketing department that never get off the draft table because they're great ideas. And while they would get, they would garner a lot of engagement and likes and comments and maybe some conversations, they don't ultimately align with our long-term objectives and the brand image that we're trying to portray. So as we're trying to build that brand efficacy, we can't sacrifice quality, or we can't sacrifice the end game for short-term gains in terms of engagement metrics and likes and comments. And I think a lot of companies make that mistake, and they feel like if they're putting out content and it's not getting, hundreds and thousands of likes and comments and going viral, that they're not doing a good job, but that's not necessarily the case, and vice versa. They could be getting a lot of attention on social media, and it doesn't really equate to building their brand long term.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And, as we were talking offline a little bit, Josh, you mentioned a specific example of where you guys kind of pivoted on some things that you guys were doing with some videos that were, internal recruitment, but they, were externally facing. And you guys had to kind of make a tough decision there. I think that's a great story. If you could tell us a little bit more about it.
Well, it was when I first started working for the company and just doing my research before I even, came in for the first day, and doing some searching and seeing what comes up. And I see these videos, and a lot of these videos, the first 3 or 4 that I saw were mainly focused on internal recruitment, and they were fun videos, and there were scavenger hunts and maybe some Nerf gun battles and some silly kind of mock interviews that people were doing. And what I realized was that while this was good for internal recruitment, or maybe just sending out fun videos, and a lot of people in the company liked them, and a lot of people outside the company liked them. But if I were a client, and the first impression I got when I did a search for our company was those videos, it may detract a little bit from my opinion of the professionalism of the company. And it may in fact, although people liked it and it was getting a lot of likes and comments and things, it may be degrading to the brand. So ultimately, we decided not to do more videos like that, and to replace some of those videos with a little bit more focused, professional type videos, and let that be people's first impression of the company. We're always trying to control the narrative. You never can control it 100%, but you can try to, guide it in the right direction. And that was one thing that, again, we didn't want to sacrifice some short-term engagement for the long-term brand image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, moving on from there, Josh, we were talking a little bit offline about personal brand. So, moving from the company level to your personal brand, and just those 2 words are kind of, a sexy buzzword that everybody's talking about these days. But I loved your thoughts on, how to approach that. So, for folks listening to this that, are really trying to think strategically about their personal brand and really haven't invested in that a ton, what are some of the thoughts that you would share with them on how they could do that the right way?
Yeah, I think there's 2 main things that I would touch on with that. One is, and it's pretty obvious, but you got to get out there. So you've got to join groups. So you've got to, join groups on LinkedIn or networking groups, where you're face to face with people. You've got to get out there if you want to really build your personal brand. The second piece of that is your message. And so, where I think a lot of people go wrong is they feel like they need to opine on everything and in every area, and be an expert on just about anything to do that's remotely related to what their profession is. And I don't think necessarily that's what you have to do. I think, everybody's got their specialties and they have their areas of expertise, and staying in that wheelhouse is really going to help you focus, but it's also going to help people see you as the authority in that area, as opposed to if you just go online and comment on everything, or you go to every networking group and you try to be the expert and, all things to all people, well, then you dilute your brand. So picking a specialty, figure out what it is that you're great at and you want to be known for, and then stay in that area, at least at first. As you get more advanced in your career, you probably get exposed to more and more, areas, but making sure that you're picking and choosing your battle, so to speak, with that.
Yeah. So, what I hear you saying, Josh, there is kind of a two-step process. First, get out there, create some visibility for yourself, have a bias towards action and visibility that's going to lead to opportunity. But as you start to do that, don't just go for every visibility opportunity. Think strategically about, what do you want to be known for, and then kind of double down on that.
Exactly. Just being vocal and doing it in the right way. That's probably the key.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the story that you shared when we were chatting a little bit before the interview, Josh, of a young man on your team that came on, was really engaged in building his personal brand, in, taking a social selling approach, getting active on LinkedIn and some other platforms, and led to some really great results.
Yeah, I think, and that was an interesting scenario. He came to me and he said, I want to grow my, my personal network. I want to get this thing going. And he was very young. He's probably 23, just got started, just got out of school. And he wanted to take on the world, yesterday. So it was interesting. He started out, he was posting just constantly all over LinkedIn, and he's being very vocal. In fact, too vocal. What I told him, I said, scale it back a little bit and maybe have some conversations, maybe ask some questions here and there to some of these more senior, executives and people that are on these comment threads and things like that. And he also started going to some networking events. He, after a couple weeks, couple months, he started meeting the right people. He started making an impression on the right people, especially online. And, down the road, just to fast forward to the end of the story, he ended up having somebody reach out to him directly who he had never spoken to, but they had seen him commenting on different threads, and they I guess at some point associated him with the area that he was actually a recruiter, so he was recruiting for, and they ended up coming on as a client. They needed our help, and it became one of our largest accounts that we have still to this day, and it all came from personal branding.
Yeah. I love that story because it brings home the real results from this, kind of fluffy, squishy topic of personal brand that we all want to talk about. But, it really does lead to results, and stories like this just kind of drive that point home. And I think you touched on a really good point there in that, this young man on your team was not only just posting stuff and letting it sit, he was engaging with other people's content. And when he was engaging, to your point, asking good questions, I think a lot of people think, what they post affects their personal brand, but they don't think about what I comment on and whether I'm leaving, negative comments or, just thoughtless comments like great post and things like that are contributing to my personal brand out there in the market as well. And, your point kind of drove that home in the story, looking at how he was leaving thoughtful comments that people were even noticing, not just, the stuff that he was posting. So I think it takes a number of different avenues to build that brand, but it's definitely worth it. And, being thoughtful in each piece of it. So going off of that point of, leaving thoughtful comments and things to do, I know you had a couple of things, Josh, that you're kind of passionate about in things not to do that can hurt your personal brand online. So why don't you expand on those a little bit for us? Yeah.
And, having those conversations is vital. I always tell people if they're not having those conversations, they're just posting and it's all one-way communication, then they're really not growing that brand. But just like with, corporate branding, it's long-term. So you're going to put a lot of effort and a lot of effort over a long period of time into building that personal brand, but you can destroy that personal brand in a heartbeat. And so you've really got to be, conscious of that and cognizant of the fact that one really bad day where you make some really snide comment or remark to somebody in a public way, especially, that can really destroy your personal brand. It doesn't even have to be online or digital. It can be at a networking event. You know, just having a poor way of going about maybe a rough conversation or a disagreement or anything that you could do to paint yourself in a negative light is it's never going to help you, and it always has the potential to destroy what you've been working towards in that personal brand. So just staying away from really any kind of bad situations, any really controversial topics online. I don't think anybody's ever, I don't want to ever say, never ever, but it's rare that somebody's really going to build their personal brand in the right way by getting into arguments on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn or anywhere else. Just something to stay away from. Just always protect that personal brand.
Yeah.
Sounds like common sense, but a lot of people fall prey to that.
Right. And you made a comment earlier when we were chatting offline, Josh, about, being negative on social and just having this conscious thought of, how can I be positive in these online conversations and how can I, add value to the conversation? It sounds like, that was a big piece for the guy on your team that really was engaging with a lot of content. Any other, points on that you'd like to leave our listeners with as they think about, their personal brand strategy and engaging with content online?
Yeah, just that everything we were talking about for personal is applicable to corporate branding. You don't, if you're in charge of corporate branding, you probably want to stay away from taking hard stances on any kind of controversial topic, because no matter what, you're going to alienate a certain percentage of your audience and potential client base. While some people may say that that's worth it, I really think that in business, you want to turn away good business partners or you want to alienate a certain segment of your audience. So keeping it professional, keeping things positive, and just always working to grow that brand image in the right way, not going after anything negative or really, again, taking hard stances on controversial topics is a pretty good start.
Right. Yeah. I mean, taking a stance on something, that's applicable to your market and your industry is one thing, but then, just taking a controversial stance on something unrelated to your target market is probably not a good idea. So, Josh, I really appreciate you being on today. If folks want to stay connected with you, stay connected with SSG, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
Yeah, really easy to find on LinkedIn, Josh Mangum. The website's searchsolutiongroup.com. So go to our website, reach out to LinkedIn. Happy to connect with anybody. And if I'm on the website with my email, if anybody wants to send me a message, that way, feel free to do so.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thanks for being our guest today. We really appreciate it. I love the stories that you shared, especially driving home, the results that you guys saw firsthand from investment in personal brand. So folks, before we let you go today, if you've been listening lately, you know that we're super excited about the Flip My Funnel conference happening August 8th in Boston. And if you haven't heard, remember when you go to flipmyfunnel.com and go to the 2018 conference and you're going to get your tickets, make sure you use the promo code B2B growth to get 50% off the price of admission, whichever level you're purchasing. So it's going to be a great conference. We're really looking forward to some phenomenal speakers that the folks over at Flip My Funnel have lined up for that. So again, it's B, the number 2, B growth. All one word, no hyphens, no spaces. Use that promo code and get yourself 50% off a great conference coming up. And we look forward to seeing a lot of our listeners and guests there.
There are lots of ways to build a community, and we've chosen to build the B2B growth community through this podcast. But because of the way podcasts work, it's really hard to engage with our listeners. And without engagement, it's tough to build a great community. So here's what we've decided to do. We're organizing small dinners across the country with our listeners and guests. No sales pitches, no agenda, just great conversations with like-minded people. We'll talk business, we'll talk family, we'll talk goals and dreams. We'll build friendships. So if you'd like to be a part of a B2B growth dinner in a city near you, go to b2bgrowthdinners.com. That's b2bgrowthdinners.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.